making a lot of noise in the morning. Why should we make a lot of noise in the morning? Who is this who's making a lot of noise in the morning? Hujui kwamba hapa kuna wanafunzi ambao wako half asleep, hawataka kustuliwa sana? Right, all right. So here we are. Just a small reminder on something very nice here. Where is this book? A small reminder on something very nice. So please let me know whether you guys are able to see my screen. Are you able to see my screen? Are you able to see my screen? Okay. So remember that you have this book. You have this book with yourself. It's an ACCA book, quite a nice book. And I would want us to look at something very small about organizational structures. And the organizational structures, ladies and gentlemen, that I would want us to look at today are only two. The ones that I'm interested in to be able to answer my today's questions are only two, only two of them. So remember, organizational structures basically gives us what we call the reporting structures. How do we, what are our reporting lines in the organization? Who is the senior most person? Like if you look at this question, ladies and gentlemen, here, or rather this structure here, we have the managing director. Underneath the managing director, we have, in this case here, other directors. These other directors are in charge of our historical functions. So like now we have historical functions. Of course, we know that any good farm out there must be having, for example, a finance function, a manufacturing function, a research and development function, a sales function. So all these are what here, like departments. And of course, each of these departments is led by a director. So like now we have a director of finance, we have a director of manufacturing. So this is what we call a functional structure, ladies and gentlemen, where we segment our organization into departments in accordance to the major functions of the farm. Major functions of the farm. Now, when you look at, so that's quite critical for my today's lesson. When you look at the next one, ladies and gentlemen, here, we have, this one here is a divisional structure. And for divisional structure, what do we have here? For divisional structure, you can see now here, we have got two divisions. We have segmented our company into two divisions. We have division A, and then we have division what here, somebody? Division B. And you can see these divisions are replicating themselves in terms of functions. So each division, ladies and gentlemen, will have its person who does finances, will have a manufacturing department, will have a research and development department, will have, in this case here, a sales department. The same case in this case here with division B. So whenever it's a divisionalized structure, ladies and gentlemen, if you are able to understand this once and for all, the better for me. When it comes to divisionalization structure, we'll have, in this case here, for example, our segments being done like now, if it's RCM College, of course, we know we have got two major products. We have the CPA and we have the ACCA. So if we are doing this divisional structure, then I'll have, in this case here, the ACCA department on one side and the CPA department on the other side. And each of these departments, ladies and gentlemen, now will have their functions. Functions in this case, which are identical. So CPA will have its own accountant. CPA will have their own people who are able to push the CPA brand to the market, the sales and marketing. The same case here with the ACCA. ACCA will also have their accountants. ACCA will also have their salespeople like that. It's a divisional structure. Serious organizations like breweries, ladies and gentlemen, for their major brands, they have this departmentalization in the form of what here? In the form of products. They have this departmentalization in the form of products. They have this departmentalization in the form of what here? In the form of products. So we'll have, for example, some product like Tusker. Tusker, ladies and gentlemen, for instance, in this case, here will be having their own salespeople. People just go there every morning. Their work is to push Tuskers in the market and ensure that people consume Tusker. So they even go through what we call, in this case here, product competition. So we have, in this case here, the sales manager of Guinness saying that today, Friday, we must have this and this particular region having higher sales in terms of what here, Guinness as compared to Tusker. That kind of internal what here, competition between brands is very healthy. So we call that one here a divisional structure. Divisional structure. The other structure that I would want you guys to appreciate, the other one that I would want you guys to appreciate is this one here. I don't know whether there is anybody, ladies and gentlemen, who has ever come across this matrix thing where you report to two bosses. You are reporting here to how many bosses? You are reporting to two bosses. You are reporting to two bosses. This happens every day in my organization. In my organization, I report to so many bosses depending on especially the projects. We have projects here. For example, we have an insurance IFRS 17 project. So there'll be a project leader. There's another project that we have, for example, we are developing like IFRS, some trainings there. So I have a project leader there. And then, of course, if I'm the one, ladies and gentlemen, who is here, this gentleman who is standing here, right? So you can see I'll be having this boss that I'm reporting to horizontally. Of course, we could even be at the same level. This guy who is the project B manager, project B's manager, could be at the same level with me as a manager. But you see, at the end of the day, as regards this project, I must report to him. Every day there are reports I must give to him to ensure that my project is on what here is on track. And then at the end of the day, I could be having another boss on top of me. So I'm reporting to another boss up there, for example, quality control department boss. Right? And a matrix organization, matrix structure is more complex. You're told here. A good way to think of a matrix organization is to think of a project team. A project team for project A, for example, will have a project leader or manager for project A. The members of the team report to that manager, but the members of the team also have their functional responsibilities. If, for example, you're an accountant, you have to report to director of finance. For example, there'll be a project accountant and someone who looks after the quality control aspects of the most important thing, ladies and gentlemen, is for you to appreciate what a matrix does. I know you guys, of course, you must have done your CPA section 4, and I'm so sure that is why we are happily here today, suffering at 4 a.m., because you passed a subject called quantitative analysis. You passed a subject called quantitative analysis. And a quantitative analysis, of course, you used to have like a matrix. So we have our matrix here, A, B, C, D, E, for example, F, which has got what here, somebody brackets like that. So when, for example, we are looking at, for example, element E, if you're asked in this case to define element E, you must tell us that element E is in row number 2, and at the same time, it's in column number what here, somebody? Column number 2. All these elements, ladies and gentlemen, have got two reporting responsibilities. We have to report row-wise and report, in this case here, column-wise. So if you're asked about this matrix structure, please remember that matrix structure, we've got what here? A situation where these employees will not be reporting to one person. And this can only work for a big established organization. If it's a small organization that is not yet mature, it cannot run matrix because employees will always have flimsy excuses for not doing their work. They'll come and tell you, you know what? In this case, I was given my work by this row manager. I was given some more work by the row manager. So first of all, I had to finish that. When this manager comes to ask him about some work that he thinks this guy never did, he'll also throw fingers and say, no, I was doing something in this case. So it must be really in a very well-structured organization. I only work in a very well-structured organization. Organizations like my organization, every 2 hours, you must, in this case here, do what we call time reporting. And they say, for the last 2 hours, what have you been doing? You go to what we call, in this case here, Jira, you time report. You say, for the last 2 hours, this is what I done. I reviewed. I looked at this. I looked at other people's time reports, etc. So once you have, in this case here, that kind of a structure, then even this matrix now will work. When this manager, in this case, even before it comes to you, even before manager A here comes to you, for example, manager whatever comes to you, it'll simply open your time report and see what you've been doing for the last number of hours. So as he comes, in this case here, to your desk, he already knows that this guy has been working on this and this project, and he's basically on course like that. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that is quite a good reminder of these things. It's quite a good reminder of these things. I would want us, of course, we have the others, but I don't want to go through the others. Okay. What I would want us to do is to look at November 2020, and really get to see how this thing is tested in our exam. In our exam, how do we get this thing tested? In our exam, how do we get this thing tested? In our exams. Great. So November 2020, headquarter Mamba. This must be a very interesting question. A question being called Mamba. That must be a very interesting question. Okay. So I would want us to do question number 1. And in question number 1, ladies and gentlemen, I'm totally required, with the aid of relevant diagrams, analyze 3 alternative structural modifications which could be made to MGL's functional organization structure to make it more flexible. I'm looking at number 2. With the aid of relevant diagrams, analyze 3 alternative structural modifications which could be made to MGL, to Mamba's functional organizational structure, to make it what here? To make it more flexible. Currently, it's a functional structure. How do we make it more flexible and more, in this case here, effective? Not a problem. That one will be able to crash it down very well. Number 1, examine 3 elements of an organizational structure. 3 elements of an organizational structure. 3 elements of an organizational structure. I'm trying to think. Like there must be something to do with span of control. How many employees report to me? That is quite important. How many employees report to me? We go to part B. Jack Safari has been against Mamba's stance on environmental conservation. This Jack Safari, of course, even this name of his is not now very nice, because if he's a safari guy who does not want a company to engage in environmental conservation, then this guy really is a bad guy. In relation to the above statement, provide 4 reasons why Mamba should be environmentally responsible. I don't even have to read the case for me to be able to answer this. What are some of the key advantages that you guys are aware of? Why these organizations, in this case, ladies and gentlemen, should engage in environmental matters. Remember, right now we are talking of climatic changes, ladies and gentlemen. You can see how we are experiencing, how we are getting our rains. Our rains are coming in a very funny way. The climate has really changed over time, right? We have issues to do with the ozone layer. Ozone layer, in this case, is becoming thinner and thinner every day. And of course, the moment will be depleted 100%. Even right now, I don't know whether it is there. The moment it's depleted 100%, of course, we'll be having those bad rays hitting on us. And that is why we are having so many cases of cancer. We have issues to do with what here? Issues to do with carbon dioxide, carbon emissions to the air. It is these carbon emissions in this case here that are eating onto what here, the ozone layer, making this life unbearable, right? So things to do with this environmental, ladies and gentlemen, conservation, they are quite critical. Who can give me 3 advantages? Why do you think is it important, ladies and gentlemen, for the organization called Mamba? Why do you think should it engage on environmental conservation matters? Somebody, how comes you can't talk about compliance issues? If you don't comply, of course, there will be penalties. NEMA will come to your organization and even close your industry. So compliance is something that will always ring in my mind whenever we talk of environmental issues. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a concept of reputation, your image. Going green automatically is the clearest way nowadays of even marketing yourself. Because there are so many consumers out here who would want to hear that they're dealing with a company that is green. And that is why you'll see companies like, for example, StanChart moved from Stanbank here. They went in this case here to their headquarters in Westlands. And you can see their house in this case here, they are saying it's what here? It's green. It's a greenhouse. Greenhouse meaning that they are not using this normal electricity that is so bad in terms of global warming because of how it is generated. Now they are only using solar. All their water is being recycled. So you get in this case here, there are so many people out there, whenever they hear of some companies that are using this green technology, they would want to buy products from them. So once you go that way, you become, in this case here, environmental conscious, and you are engaging in things, ladies and gentlemen, that people are able to see automatically of environment, that people are able to see automatically, you are improving your image to the public. Ladies and gentlemen, as I'm explaining this thing, there must be something that is ringing in your head. That if these organizations and ourselves don't take care of our environment, then very soon you're going to be finished. We'll not be having supplies for our raw materials. So then companies, in this case, should engage on environmental issues for sustainability. Right? And that is why everybody, including yourselves, including companies that you work for, we must really endeavor to reduce on our carbon footprint. So like now here, I'm so happy because like now yesterday, when I was looking at the number that of students that I had for advanced financial management, right? About 140 students, have been able to contribute to reduction of our carbon footprints. Because were it not for these online classes, if all those 140 students were coming to town, right, to look for us physically, look at, in this case here, the vehicles, whatever transportation, right? So to reduce my own carbon footprint, maybe next time when I'll be buying a car, I'll think of an electric vehicle, I'll not think of these vehicles that are burning fossil fuels. Right? Because we are told, ladies and gentlemen, at the end of the day, each one of us must ensure that we are reducing on our carbon footprint. How I wish the examiner this time around can ask a detailed question on this concept of what here environmental, and I'm so sure I've spoken so many things. If you guys are keen, you must have heard of this. Right? So in this case here, we are saying that these companies should engage in environmental matters for purposes of sustainability, ensuring that their future is sustainable. They'll be able to get, in this case here, raw materials from the environment in the future. They'll be able to get water. Like now I can see a big water crisis ahead of us in the next 20 years. We don't know what our kids will be using. Right? Right? Ladies and gentlemen, I would advocate this organization to go for environmental issues for purposes of being a good neighbor. It is a corporate social responsibility. It's a corporate social responsibility. Great. And then, ladies and gentlemen, remember, whenever you're looking at environmental issues, please always remember what we call sustainability reporting. This is quite common in your exams, sustainability reporting. Is there anybody who is able to remember the concept of sustainability reporting? Sustainability reporting. Sustainability reporting, ladies and gentlemen, is where basically we make use of what we call the 3 Ps of reporting. The 3 Ps of reporting. So 3 Ps of reporting, what do we have here? That when we are reporting, when we are doing our reporting, remember initially, we used to be quite stupid. Even right now, there are so many accountants and gentlemen who are still using this kind of an old archaic model, where they're only looking at the future, or rather the past. They do historical financial statements alone, right? Nowadays, things have really evolved. We have new methodologies like sustainability reporting that have sprung up, which tells you that for you to be able to report sustainably, where the organization in this case here will be able to outlive their owners and of course employees, current employees at the end of the day, we need to report on the 3 Ps model. And the 3 Ps model, what do we have? We must report on profitability, profits. We must report, ladies and gentlemen, in terms of people. In terms of people, we must come and report on, ladies and gentlemen, on the planet. What did we do for our planet in the current year? And even in the future, what are we planning to do for our planet, the environment, issues like that, right? This is what we call, whenever they ask you the question to do with sustainability reporting, always think of this. That let us not be greedy. When we are greedy, when we think only of one stakeholder called the shareholder, we only think of profits because it is out of profits that these guys will be able to get dividends. We don't want to be very greedy. We want to spread this thing using the 3 Ps. So for instance, you'll get nowadays, I don't know whether there is anybody who is working for a very serious firm. A very serious firm must report on what they do for people. And what they are doing for people, the highest stakeholder here becomes the employee. So they must say, for example, our sales are so good. Last year, we were able to scoop from the market 100 billion. And out of 100 billion, about 30% went to our employees in form of salaries, wages, and bonuses. 30% going to employees, that is very good. That, for example, we have an exemplary medical cover with the AAR. How I wish AAR could hear this. They could easily appoint me to be the ambassador, isn't it? Right? Which is non-discriminatory, where even our cleaners in this case here have the same cover, for example, with bosses, like 10 million cover per annum for inpatient, right? So talk about what is it that you did for people, If you look at, for example, Amazon online, they're very good in sustainability reporting. You'll see what they're reporting about their employees. Where at the end of the day, they'll come and mention, and they don't cheat. They'll come and mention that our labor turnover reduced. Last year it was 10%. This year labor turnover is 6%. Meaning that there is something nice that you're doing for our people, etc., for the planet. Of course, the environment, now you report on for the environment, you report on, yes, thank you very much, Felix, employee development, yes. For the planet, you report on your footprints, carbon emissions, footprints. You report on what we call carbon neutrality. How do you neutralize your carbon? Of course, with whatever that we are doing. Whether you like it or not, ladies and gentlemen, we are emitting some form of carbons. So many of them. So in this case, as we emit these carbons, then on the other side, we must be having, in this case here, some activities that absorb carbon from the environment. And the very best activity is to plant trees. So at the end of each year when you are reporting, you must tell us as an organization, what is it that you did for you to be able to neutralize your carbons? And nowadays, it's very easy. If you're not able to neutralize your carbons by planting your own trees, you can do what we call carbon offsetting. There are companies that have come in the US, in the UK, Kenya, you don't have such a company. I expect you guys to innovate and come up with this kind of a company, which in this case is a company that basically does what you plant trees for other organizations. We tell other organizations that, you know what, if you don't have time to go for Karura Forest and you've been able to calculate your carbon footprint, please be giving us a portion of your revenue, like 0.5% of your entire revenue. We plant trees for you, and please make sure that if you innovate something like that, you are able to be very faithful, right? Offsetting carbon footprint. So I hope this is okay. So anything to do with sustainability reporting like that. And of course, don't forget what we call integrated reporting. Integrated reporting also is big. Integrated reporting is also big in form of environmental issues, in form of sustainability, integrated reporting. So integrated reporting, is there anybody who can tell me something to do with integrated reporting? To integrate is to put together. We are putting together, ladies and gentlemen, our report in a way that we shall be able to please all the stakeholders. And to please all the stakeholders, including the community around, including our suppliers, our customers, our employees, really, we must report on what we call sustainability, right? So under integrated reporting, ladies and gentlemen, remember, in this case here, we must do what we call a financial performance report. A financial performance report. This has to be there. And integrated reporting, we must have a whole like 2-3 pages where basically we talk about what here our strategy as an organization. Strategy. We must have, in this case, ladies and gentlemen, a whole 2-3 pages where we talk about what here our prospects. Where we talk about our prospects. What some integrated reports will call future outlook. The future outlook. Ladies and gentlemen, we must have like a few pages here, which basically will be talking about our business case. Sisi wakora, lazima tuonyeshe in this case here, how are we getting this money from the public? What is our business model? Like if it is RCM publishers, we have books that we are selling. I'll be able to dictate my revenue streams, right? Perhaps somewhere we have some rental income. So we have to state our business case. How are we able to generate, in this case here, this performance like that? Remember, ladies and gentlemen, any organization that does this integrated reporting, the managers, the CEOs up there, the board of directors will always tend to understand their business better. And all organizations that are doing very well, especially during this corona pandemic, ladies and gentlemen, their managers exactly know what is to be done. They know their business. Most of us here are running businesses that we don't even know what they're doing exactly. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's continue here. And please, under integrated reporting, never forget the 6 capitals. Never forget the 6 capitals. Is there anybody who is able to remember the 6 capitals under integrated reporting? How I wish these guys could bring a whole case on these environmental issues. Is there anybody who is able to remember the 6 capitals of integrated reports, IR? 6 capitals. Lucy has remembered human capital. 6 capitals. Thank you very much. You guys will be able to do research on that. Now, look at the next one. The board of directors of MGL claimed that they were unaware of anti-competitive practices, which led to imposition of a penalty by the competition authority. Examine 4 duties expected of members, board of directors. Such a question, I do not need even to read the case study. These are questions that I can easily answer, and they are easy, and you can see they've got so many marks, 8 marks. 8 marks. Can somebody in this case here talk to us this morning nicely and tell us, in this case here, any 4 duties that you guys are aware of, 4 duties of a company's board of directors. 4 duties of the board. 4 duties of the board. Somebody, how I wish you guys could type very fast. 4 duties of the board. And try in this case here to be quite figurative. Think of even the organization where you are in, right? Think of the directors when they come. What are those key things that you guys know that they really, really talk about? Board of directors, functionalities, functions of board of directors. Like I can see what Lucy is saying, they plan and formulate strategies. I like that, right? I like that, right? Yeah, the concept of what is strategic direction. These guys are actually the ones in this case here who provide the budgetary guidelines. And at the end of the day, once those budgets are done by our juniors there, at the end of the day, they must approve budgets. I like that. They must approve budgets, yes. Monitor, evaluate, and implement organizations' policies. I like that. The concept of establishment of policies for governance, yes. You know, even if they will not be the ones, ladies and gentlemen, implementing those policies, they have to ensure that they are implemented correctly. They must ensure that they are implemented correctly. Thank you very much, Lucy. They are responsible for any water resource allocations. Thank you very much. And of course, they've got everything to do with water compliance issues. Risk management, compliance issues, risk management. Risk management. That is why these guys cannot really absolve themselves from this big penalty that they were charged, that they were not aware of any anti-competition water laws. That is wrong. That is wrong. And that is why I like a student who has told us up there that it's very important to ensure that your board of directors, ladies and gentlemen, has a mix of water skilled personnel. Hapana kuwa kama board zina ambao nimeona unapata board iko na accountants wanne. Ati hiyo ndio board. Hiyo ni board gani? Board inafaa ikuwe, ladies and gentlemen, with people of varied skills. A lawyer is very important, 1 accountant or 2 accountants, right? If possible, in this case here, we need a doctor, right? We need to balance this board also in terms of what your gender. Very, very important. Very, very important. Merab says theirs has 9 lawyers. With 9 lawyers, those are too many. There'll be a lot of noise and complications in the board. A lot of noise. Even if it's different skills in law, I can't really support that. I cannot support that. That will bring a lot of noise. When they start calling themselves learned friends, and maybe they're 9 versus the other guys are 3, the other guys will feel they are very foolish. Roman 2, citing 3 reasons, justify the need to reduce the size of the board. Why should we work with a lean board? Do I need to read anybody's case question there? No. Why should I work with a smaller board? Could you kindly, in this case, ladies and gentlemen, give me those reasons why we need a board of fewer people? Like, remember, they normally say, ladies and gentlemen, that maximum number of directors at a board should be about 9. If you go to some parastatals which have got 15 directors, everything there becomes messy, right? At times we get even some directors on just little provocation. These guys start, in this case, jumping on top of tables, right? So when you have a lean board, you'll be able to make decisions, in this case here, what here, somebody quite fast and easily, right? Right? So like now somebody is telling me they called Clement saves time on decision making. Yes, the concept of cost reduction, these directors, they are not coming to the board and then we give them bananas. Some of these directors are paid heavily. Like I know of a company which pays all the way up to 40,000 as sitting allowance, in this case here, per meeting. So having a leaner board, of course, will make it cheaper for the company. Yes. Those are very few points you guys have given me. Advantages of having ladies and gentlemen, a leaner board. Advantages of having a leaner board. You know, at the end of the day, you have only given me 2 points, all of you. You've only given me 2 points. You've only given me 2 points. Thank you very much, Mwangi. Cohesiveness within the board. When you are a fewer, you tend in this case to have a better bond between yourselves. When the board is so big, we always have what we call fractures, like we have like sub-boards now. These three are talking to each other between themselves. They're not talking to this. So I like the concept of cohesion. I'm still waiting for one more. Cohesivity. Thank you very much, Liz. I did not expect any student to come up with this kind of a point. The concept of accountability and responsibility. When you are fewer, you'll not be able to make that kind of a nonsense argument that some people are making up there, that we do not know that anti-competition laws exist. When you are too many, you'll always, in this case, you think that whatever is happening is none of my business. But when you are so few, then you become accountable, you become what you are, responsible. We'll be able to pinpoint and say, hey, you are the only lawyer that we have here. How comes you want to tell us that you're not aware of this? P. Mwangi is talking about productivity, which is quite closely related to easy decision making. Yes, the fewer you are, the more productive you become. The more productive you become. Ladies and gentlemen, I've attended so many board meetings. So many board meetings, especially when we are doing these strategic plans. And the kind of boards I see out there, I don't know whether it is because perhaps, ladies and gentlemen, we have got quite few skilled directors. I don't know. But there are boards in this case that are never productive. And those boards, you realize that the chairman is so weak. You realize that the company secretary as well is so weak. Allow me to change my battery. So these guys are so weak. When you have a very weak chairman, you can't even ponder on one agenda and finish in good time. So at the end of the day, you keep on oscillating on personal issues and trying to show other directors how important you are, and you could be the most useless person in that board. Right? So at the end of the day, you are not productive, especially when you are too many of you. The issues of side shows crop up so much, you'll not end up in this case here being what you are, being productive. So productivity, yes, I like this. Let's move on. Ladies and gentlemen, the next one, what are they telling us here? The next one, wanasema, I like also another point that Nana has brought there, the concept of commitment, really. When you are fewer, you'll tend to be more committed. You guys are bright. D, discuss 3 non-financial measures of performance that MCL could focus on as it rolls out the balanced scorecard system. If I'm the one doing this, I'll end up getting all the marks. How will I end up getting all the marks even without reading the case study? I'll remember the general structure of the balanced scorecard, the 4 perspectives. Is there anybody who is able to remember the 4 perspectives? Because I know my students must be remembering them. Balanced scorecard perspectives, they're normally 4. Thank you very much. So in this case here, we have the financial perspective, we have the customer perspective, we have the processes perspective, internal process perspective. We have in this case here, market really. Research and innovation, you guys are trying, but you are cheating a little bit. Training. It's called learning and what here? Innovation. It's called learning and innovation. Learning and innovation. Learning and innovation. Learning and who? And innovation. Learning and innovation. So, of course, we know that we have got only one quadrant, in this case here, which is talking about what here? Which is talking about money. Yes, it could be learning and innovation into bracket. When you are learning, when you are innovating, then we are growing. So into bracket, you could talk of what here? Growth. You're right. In bracket, you could talk of what here? Growth. The growth perspective, really. Right. So this is the only monetary. All the other perspectives are what here? They are, ladies and gentlemen, non-financial. They wanted non-financial, right? Non-financial. So I'll be able to speak so many things, but of course, as I speak about these things, ladies and gentlemen, it'll be very important for me to also try link them up with my case. So like under the customer perspective, I would want a performance metric which looks at whether we are growing. Are we acquiring new customers? So I would want a metric on customer acquisition. I would want a metric on customer satisfaction. I would want, ladies and gentlemen, a metric on what here? Loyalty of customers. Loyalty of customers. I would want a metric, ladies and gentlemen, to do with what here? Awareness, publicity. Awareness. The processes I would want, ladies and gentlemen, the processes I would want something to do with what here? Automation. The type of what here? Management, type of management, because processes can never work out themselves. We would need, in this case here, to have good structures, management structures to run them. I would want a metric on learning and innovation. I would want to see, in this case here, things like training hours. How many hours are my people putting in training? My employees putting in training, right? The moment I have this general structure, now I will very easily answer the questions that the examiner, or rather go back to the question and be able to really plow it like a serious person. Great. So we go back now to the case question and read it very fast, and it will allow me to read it like nobody's business. Mamba Group. Headquartered in Mombasa, Kenya, Mamba has been one of the largest manufacturers and marketers of food, home and personal care brands, and baby products in Kenya for several decades. So I'm able to see their main products. Founded in 1957, when I was born, the consumer goods company has applied expansion, acquisition, and joint ventures to achieve a distribution network that now spans across more than 8 African countries. Apart from its operations in Kenya, MGL also has interest in international food business, Tanzania, Malawi, Southern Sudan, Uganda, and Rwanda. For the period between January 2018 and December 2018, MGL reported a 5% increase in operating profit from domestic business. The group's turnover increased by 6% to 3 billion, but the operating profit declined by 3% to 0.5 billion during the same period. In an effort to conserve the environment, the use of microplastics in all personal care products was phased out by the group in the year 2015. Mamba's strategies today are more focused on sustainable like that and ethical values. In January 2019, MGL recruited a new chief sustainability officer. This is quite an important organization that is now looking at sustainability, environmental issues so seriously. The firm's new chief sustainability officer, Jack Safari, has been questioning whether attempts to be socially responsible are contributing to the firm's declining bottom line. These are useless men who should be fired the same day. This is because their competitors are not keen on social responsibility. Let them not be keen on social responsibility, as we shall be so keen on social responsibility because it is one of the ways that we are using even to market ourselves, to brand ourselves. We want our brand to stand in the market, right? In the last senior management meeting, Jack Safari recommended that this issue be seriously interrogated by the internal auditor and the external audit team too. In April 2019, the Competition Authority found Mamba and its competitor Zura Foods and BD Foods guilty of anti-competitive behavior and conspiring to increase the price of product Z. Zura Foods paid a penalty of 2 million to the Competition Authority, while BD Foods were granted immunity for cooperating with the Competition Authority. despite cooperating with the competition authority, Mamba had to pay a fine of 1 million. Mamba's 20-member board is so big. Is concerned since they were unaware of these anti-competitive practices. They believe that their adverse action could stifle the program towards their firm's aim of being the continent's most admired brand for consumer packaged goods, and that of being a high-performance, fast-moving consumer goods company. The board is considering several key decisions, including, number one, reviewing the firm's organizational structure from a functional one to a more flexible structure, hiring a chief legal officer, scaling up the implementation of an automated balanced scorecard, performance management system, and then we have public listing of the firm. So when you hear of them talking about public listing, they would want to issue shares to the public, ladies and gentlemen. Great. So with reference to MGL's organizational design, examine 3 elements of an organizational structure. Could you kindly give me these elements here? Could you kindly give me these elements? Just try your best. Please give me those elements very first. Please try your best. Elements of an organizational structure. I'm not supposed to talk at all. I'm supposed to be listening now to you. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, what are they talking about here? Chain of command, esprit de corps. No, not really. Ile kitu ya kwanza hapa ningetaka kuona wanafunzi wakiongea kuhusu it's like basically the functions of the organizational structure, right? Elements, yes, of the organizational structure. Yes. Now somebody has been able to get this correctly. So the first thing that I will think about there, ladies and gentlemen, of course, will be, number one, the span of control. The span of control. Are we going to talk over a narrow span, so span of control, or a wide span? So the span of control is quite important. The span of control is quite important. The span of control is very important. These are key elements. The span of control. So like this organization, ladies and gentlemen, is a very big organization. So we expect, of course, ladies and gentlemen, to have what we call to have a wide, not unless they want to have so many managers. We need to have, in this case here, a wide span where we have, like, say, 30 employees reporting to one manager, meaning that we must have very serious managers. It's not easy for you to be able to control a crowd, right? We must have really quite high, enlightened, and motivated managers. So span of control, this is quite an important thing. Thank you very much. Then somebody is talking about, ladies and gentlemen, the concept of what here? Job designs, yes. Job designs is another element. Under job design, we expect, ladies and gentlemen, once in this case here, everybody has known where they fall in the organization, we need you to give. So we need Mamba, that's why you put it. We need Mamba, in this case here, to produce job descriptions for each employee, depending on where, ladies and gentlemen, these guys are falling in the organizational structure. So job design, I love this job design. The other one that I've seen that shows me that these students are quite good is the concept of what here? Work specialization, yes. So we have the concept of work specialization. Work specialization. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a Mamba company, is a big company. You can see it's a multinational. If you're not careful, we may end up having employees who are misplaced, who are being taken, in this case, ladies and gentlemen, to departments that are not fitting their level of skills, whatever courses they did. So under work specialization, of course, ladies and gentlemen, this organizational structure would want to put these employees where we think they fit best, given their skills. So under such, in this case here, Mamba should employ a very experienced HR. Right? We have Felix talking about formalization. I love that. That, ladies and gentlemen, a very important element of this organizational structure will be the concept of what here? Formal. We call them formal reporting. Formal reporting what here? Formal reporting structures. Yes, we know who reports to who. So in terms of trying to move whatever points I'm putting across, I must keep on mentioning Mamba. So like now in Mamba Limited, when we have, ladies and gentlemen, a structure that is working, effective structure, automatically each person will be able to know whom they report to. We shall be able to, ladies and gentlemen, reduce on the confusion, basically the chain of command. The chain of command, yes, the chain of command. The chain of command, right? Ladies and gentlemen, somebody there is telling us something very key feature of this organizational structure. The concept of what here? Departmentation, yes. At the end of the day, this, we use these structures also to come up with departments. Where do you belong? You are in this department. You are in the training department. You are in this. So departmentation, I love that. Authority, of course, comes with this. And then please never forget that any question of case study, it's very important for you to keep on mentioning the name of the company. Even if you are not very correct, just keep on mentioning. Mamba Limited will be able to use, ladies and gentlemen, this organizational structure to create departments and fill them up with the employees, in this case here, who are really qualified to be in those departments, I like that. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We also use this particular structures, organizational structures here for delegation purposes. You can't come, you are down here, you want to delegate up. Doesn't matter. It doesn't work that way. For delegation purposes, I love that. Thank you very much. ladies and gentlemen, we move on. We take the next one. We take the next question. So the next question, with the aid of relevant diagrams, analyze 3 alternative structural modifications which could be made to MGL's functional organizational structure to make it more flexible. So the first thing, ladies and gentlemen, that I will really talk about here is this functional structure. So under the functional structure, this is what I expect of this company. Under the functional organizational structure, this is what I expect of this company. Under the functional, what these guys have, of course, they must be having an MD there. And then after the MD, right immediately after the MD, we have the major functions. And of course, being the accountants that we are, we'll have to start with our function, which is finance. Of course, we have heard that these guys are doing what here? These guys, of course, are manufacturing. So we must have some manufacturing department. Ladies and gentlemen, we must in this case here be having, in this case here, for example, the sales and marketing, etc., sales and marketing, etc., sales and marketing, etc., right? So we have now the major functions, the major functions, the quality department, yes, it's simply listed there, yes. So this is what already they have. But with this, I can see a problem. What is the problem? I'll come and tell them that, Mamba is a multinational company that produces multiple products. That produces multiple products. So then functional products, rather functional company, functional organizational structure cannot work for this kind of a company, cannot work for this kind of a company. Yes, we have research and development. If you can add them, Thank you very much. You can add them. Yes. So the key thing is that I've been able to draw this functional department, and I've said a very pregnant point here, that Mamba is a multinational company that produces multiple products. And because of this element, then functional organizational structure is inappropriate. By writing like that, ladies and gentlemen, already you have scared the examiner. The examiner knows that we are working with a script of a very bright student. Right? And I can see it's 5 exactly. I don't know whether you guys could give me like 20 minutes. We finish this question. 20 minutes. We finish this question. Yes. Right. After all, if you have to, it's 450. So Mamba is a multinational company that produces multiple products. So then, ladies and gentlemen, what I would, ladies and gentlemen, recommend to this organization is a divisional structure. I would recommend a divisional structure. Divisional structures will really work for this kind of organizations easily. I would recommend, so I'll say there that for proper monitoring and evaluation, I would recommend a divisional structure to this organization. I would recommend a divisional structure to this organization. And then our divisional structure, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, Oscar. Thank you very much, Oscar. I could come and recommend, of course, after I've said that, I'll tell them what Oscar is saying. Oscar's really helped us. But divisional can either be geographic or product-based. Can either be geographic or what year product-based. Geographic or product-based. Haya, sasa kutoka hapo nikuje nimchoree nimwambie product-based. Product-based divisional structure, product-based divisional structure, ili kitu rahisi. Nakuja hapa, hii ni vitu ya kumchorea, hata usitumie ruler. Especially my great friends here, ladies, hapo usitumie ruler. Ladies wanapenda kutumia ruler sana. Aha, sasa unakuja hapa, tuweke MD, hata kama tutumie ruler, tuweke MD katikati. MD katikati, uni MD unamchora hapo, MD unamchora hapo, right? Unakuja hapa sasa. So kama ni product, please try to label, try to mention most of their products. Try to mention most of their products. Which products do we have? Are you able to see the products that we have? Try to mention some of their products. Try to mention some of the products that this company is producing. Look up there. Remember, you're trying also to show what here, to show that really. So, for example, we have Mary saying baby products. Baby products. Baby products. We have food. You know, I'm copying what you guys are giving me. I don't know. Food. From paragraph number 1, they have given us the product. We have products in this case here, which are what here for personal care, personal care, personal care, personal care, personal care. Is there any other type of product? Ama zimeisha kuna home. Alafu kama ni divisional structure, ladies and gentlemen, kama ni divisional structure, ladies and gentlemen, then now what you need to do under each division, under each division, under each division, come and give us the functionalities. Functional under each division, give us the functionalities under each division. Under each division, give us the functionalities. Under each division, give us the functionalities. Give us the functionalities. Give us the functionalities. Under each division, give us the functionalities. You don't have really to be very careful with even what they are saying there. You don't even have to list all the products. No. So under each division, now come and tell us that we have, for example, the finance there. We have, for example, the production element. Production element. We have, for example, ladies and gentlemen, the sales. You don't have to mention really everything, right? So, and remember, if it's a divisional structure, each of the product now is a division, right? Each of the product is a division, right? So we have here, for each, you must mention the same: finance, production, we have sales. Usiweke mingi at research and marketing hapa. Sitakuwa too much wewe. Itakuwa too much. Tuko na finance, tuko na production, tuko na sales, tuko na finance, tuko na production, tuko na sales, like that. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'll come and mention that really I recommend this kind of an organizational structure to Mamba, because number one, it will lead, ladies and gentlemen, to optimization, right, over our resources in terms of what here, product, in terms of each product. We'll be able to know, for example, through our accounting, which product is doing best. Where do we allocate most of our resources to? Right? Like Ellen is giving us something there that when we go this way, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be able to achieve specialization. Tutakuwa na mtu ye kazi yake ni mambo ya baby products. Hata anapoenda nyumbani ana advise watu mambo na baby products sana. I'm specialized. Those are the kind of things I would want to hear you guys speaking about. Right? Ladies and gentlemen, I'll come and mention there. The other one, of course, is to come and think of what is geographical. Can I mention something to do with the geographical? Have you been able to take in? It's about high level. Otherwise, whatever you guys will be putting here, the points will be putting there, talking about Mamba. Mamba should be your chorus. Ukitaka vizuri, hata kama hujui kuimba, kama kuna matatu siku moja nilipanda, nikakuwa nasikia muziki sana, kwa hiyo matatu ulikuwa ameweka kelele karibu hata nishuke. Lakini unajua ukienda kuambia wapunguze sauti, wanakuambiaga mzee, shuka chini. Hawataki hata pesa yako wa vijana. Right? So hiyo muziki mpaka sasa nakumbuka chorus. Naweza kuwa nimesahau kila kitu, lakini chorus ilikuwa inasema atiweka shida chini, mikono wapi? Mikono juu. Weka shida chini, nakumbuka mpaka leo. Uweke mikono juu namna hiyo. So hata hapa chorus yako kwa case study ni jina ya kampuni. Unakaa kidogo, unakuja unasema Mamba. That if Mamba, for example, goes for this, automatically now we are going to encourage what here? Specialization in the farm. We are going to encourage, ladies and gentlemen, competition between products. Right? And then you try also to personalize, because now here you are the consultant. Unasema, I would recommend, and then you write good handwriting. I would recommend. I would recommend, like that. You have to specialize, yes. You have to specialize, yes. The concept of team spirit, I like that. Felix is bringing in the concept of team spirit. So in this case here, you'll come and say, like, where I work, you'll come and say that this department, because they did this and this time around, they're going to Mombasa. So they go so they feel like we are a team, and a better team for that matter. How I wish I was going to sit for this exam this time around. Now, from there, ladies and gentlemen, we have what we call the geographical, divisional structure. So under geographical divisional structure, ladies and gentlemen, what do we have? The same. So we'll have in this case here the MD. So the MD now what you need to do is to come and appoint regional managers. So regional managers, ladies and gentlemen, regional managers, what do we have? Regional managers, you have to remember some of those countries. We have to remember some of those countries. We must remember some of those countries. Somebody. And please don't list like now this semester I saw so many students who are trying to draw something. No, it's about the concept. It's about the concept. We have Rwanda, the beautiful Rwanda. We have Tanzania. We have South Sudan. Ya mwisho ni gani? Si lazima tuweke zote. Tuko na Kenya. Alafu najua maisha pia nataka mwanafunzi ambao ni cartoon. Maisha nataka mwanafunzi ambao ni cartoon, hata kuja muongezea hapo ETC. Wewe muongezee ETC. Maisha nataka cartoon. Unakuwa cartoon kama kuna kijana naona, ukijana akona very big following. Anaitwa Grand P. Cartoon, lakini kama amepata pesa, Grand P. Mnakajua kweli haka kijana? Grand P. Cartoon. Kama amepata pesa kweli. Mnakajua kweli? Kama amepata pesa sana haka kijana. So maisha yanataka namna hiyo, unakuwa cartoon and you will really excel. You'll excel. Now, of course, for each of these, ladies and gentlemen, now here, for each of these, kama ni Rwanda market, ladies and gentlemen, now we have our products. Kila manager atakuwa na report on the products. Kila manager atakuwa na report on the products, etc. So kwa mfano kuna baby care, whatever, kuna food, whatever, kuna whatever, namna hiyo. Okay, so hapo unazirepeat. Ukisema hapa ni baby food whatever, unazirepeat hapa baby food etc. Na usiandike etc mingi pia utakuwa cartoon mkubwa sana wewe. Sasa mwalimu anasema tuandike etc, unaweza kuandika etc kila mahali, right? And if you want in this case here to spread this further, you can now come and put your functionalities down there. So this will become in this case here like a military like structure. Which is quite lengthy. Before you reach this guy, it's quite a bad structure. Like that. But ultimately, ladies and gentlemen, when we departmentalize this thing this way, we shall be able to have like the regional managers here being very serious. Because now you are measuring their performance depending on their regions. So then the biggest advantage here for Mamba at the end of the day is that the regional managers now will be accountable for their revenue. They'll be accountable for their expenses. At the end of the day, we expect each region to boost our overall profitability. Right? It's not a joke. For serious organizations, ladies and gentlemen, like somebody is talking about Equity Bank, these guys are quite serious with their responsibilities. When they give you like a regional management role, you must really sweat it out, right? So at the end of the day, like Ellen is telling us, the biggest disadvantage here will be what here? Duplication of resources. I love that. Those are some of the points you come and tell them, you show them you know English. As much as I say this is very good because of these performance appraisals and whatever, you come and tell them, however, it leads to duplication of what here? Resources because of this. Accountant all over in each region. Thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, this organization is also a complex one. It's quite a complex one. And if, for example, they are running, especially these regions, at times they come and when they're expanding, they treat regions as if they're what year projects. If they decide to treat regions as if they are projects, then at times at the preliminary stages, you could recommend this complicated model, the matrix model. So under matrix model, please take your regions as if in this case here they are projects. So we have here Kenya. We have in this case here Kenya. We have Rwanda. We have Tanzania, etc. Remember, this thing is all about your imagination. It's all about your imagination. It's all about your imagination, ladies and gentlemen. Come and put up whatever. You can come and put up the functional ones up here. So for example, we have, ladies and gentlemen, we have in this case here, we have the finance. We have in this case here, for example, ladies and gentlemen, we have the marketing, etc. So that now we shall be having our lines. In this case here, our matrix becomes quite easy. Our matrix becomes easy like that. So we have the Rwanda people, when they want, in this case, anything to do with accounting, they're able to get, etc. So at any given time, you'll get some employees. At any given time, you'll get some employees. At any time, you get some employees. Kama sasa huyu hapa sasa. And a report, in this case here, kwa Rwandan manager, and a report kwa finance team at the same time. The accountant who has to give reports. He has two reporting responsibilities. Right? Sasa unapata kama ni SG, mwanafunzi amekosa kitu ya kuandika, paka tukatuna amechora, anaanza kutuwekea tu emoji, anatuwekea macho na aka kameni. Right? Sasa zina nakaeka kama kamekasirika, sababu ana kitu ya kuandika, kwa mtihani. Right? And then of course you'll be able to tell us that as much as this thing brings in a lot of order in terms of employees really supervision, it's a very complicated model. It's a very complicated model. I will not recommend it. I'm only putting it up here for the sake that the examiner told me to talk about what here, three of them. But I'll not recommend it. I'll not recommend it at all. I'll not recommend it at all. I'll not recommend it at all. And please always try to work with the number of marks given. The drawings will be able to give me some marks and those points that I'm jotting there. And please don't forget the chorus. It's mamba. If you want to making mamba, your chorus, you can't pass any case question. We had already answered part B. Duties of the board already answered. I think we have answered the entire question. We have answered the entire question. Asanteni sana. Your 100 bob imeisha. Muwe na siku njema. Tuonane saa 3 kamili.